Our Constitution is being shredded. We know about the secret wiretaps. We know about the secret military tribunals, the secret White House email accounts, the secret White House email accounts, the secret White House email accounts. It is a stunning record of secrecy and corruption.
Developing tonight, the White House taking serious heat after the New York Times reveals former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton conducted all of her government business on a private email account. The revelation opening her and the administration up to suggestions that they may have had something to hide, possibly broke record-keeping laws, or even may have put our nation's security at risk by leaving her emails vulnerable to hackers.
It appears that it was an account established even before her Senate confirmation hearings began, that this was a volitional, premeditated, intentional plan to avoid the scrutiny and the accountability that would eventually come.
Joining me now, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst. All right, so break this down for us. Mandated that she has to return these records, correct?
Yes.
And is it a criminal offense that she used private email and did not use government email while she was Secretary of State for state business?
Well, it would depend what's on her emails. If on her emails is classified information, say information about the raid to capture or kill Osama bin Laden, something of the highest level of classified, and she had that on her personal emails, she arguably could be charged with the same crime for which the government announced this morning General Petraeus will plead guilty, which is the improper storage, improper removal, improper placement of classified materials.
All right. Hillary Clinton must have known, Judge. Help me out with this. She signs up for a personal email account. She becomes Secretary of State. She had to have made that personal decision in her mind that eventually this would come out and that it was more important to be secretive with the emails while she was Secretary of State than the news media and how they would cover this day right now.
You know, this is apparently the way Mrs. Clinton thinks. In her mind, what you and I and everybody else in the media is talking about this afternoon is a political question. It's not a question of her personal ethics and her personal judgment. She took an oath to uphold the law. The law requires that the government retain all of these documents. She knowingly violated that law.
The guidelines that are laid out under the Federal Records Act require that records that are maintained, that pertain to official government business, that do reside in one's personal email account, should be turned over to agency officials so that those records can be properly maintained and preserved.
And can you make a judgment as to whether or not you believe the secretaries complied with that guidance?
Well, again, I know that Secretary Clinton's team has indicated that they complied with that guidance.
So you have the Secretary of State potentially transacting national business on an unsecured server or a private server, and that leaves our secrets, and not just that, but our strategies exposed to the Chinese and the Russians and other intelligence agencies.
But again, what Secretary Clinton's team has said is that they reviewed the emails, and they took the emails that were related to her official work as the Secretary of State and sent them to the State Department.
This is an absolute outrage. I cannot believe that people are really going to try to defend this behavior, not only using this private account, but then going through all of the private emails and deeming which ones are worthy to be sent over to the government to be kept for archive purposes. Something tells me that maybe some emails didn't make it all the way across. And by the way, this also explains why she never responded to my email request for an interview on Benghazi. I had the wrong email.
Very good. That was very funny. All right, let's see. Simon, are you going to defend her? Did she do anything wrong?
She made a mistake. She shouldn't have done it. There's going to be a cloud of just like what you're saying. I mean, it's going to be very hard for them to ever prove that every email that was appropriate ever gets returned.
Fox News alert for you now. White House dodging tough questions for a second day in a row over transparency and the revelations that Hillary Clinton exclusively used personal email accounts while serving as Secretary of State, even running a private server from her home. The existence of her private email account first became public when it was hacked back in 2013. Well, then at the end of last year, Clinton turned over 55,000 pages of correspondence. She turned that over to the State Department as required by law. The chair of the Benghazi Select Committee says he found out about the personal addresses last summer, but was stunned to find out only recently They were the only accounts she had, that she never had an official government account. South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy is heading up the investigation into the Clinton emails, and he joins me now. Congressman, let's start with when you first became aware that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was using a private email account and not a government one.
August of 2014, so late last summer, the committee discovered that she was using, at least episodically, a private email account. We did not learn until last week that that was the only thing she was using. There is no official State Department email account for Secretary Clinton.
So how does that affect the Benghazi Select Committee?
Oh, in myriad ways. We have been charged, Gretchen, with finding out everything that happened before, during, and after Benghazi, which necessarily means that we have to access whatever documents and emails the Secretary may have. So traditionally, you would go to the State Department as the keeper of the record and say, give me all the emails responsive to these search terms. Well, you can ask the State Department from now until the Lord comes back. They don't have them. She has them. So now you are in the position of Secretary Clinton being the keeper of her own records.
Well, what about the 55,000 emails that supposedly she did hand over in December?
And what assurance and guarantee do you have that that production was complete?
And how would you answer that question? How are you going to be able to find out that everything that you need to see, and I guess by law that you can see, that you're going to?
Well, there's only one way to do it, or I guess there are two ways, but one way is to get everything from her. Get everything from her and have a neutral, independent arbiter. I'm not interested in emails that have nothing to do with Benghazi. I could care less about that. But by the same token, there's a reason that we don't let people judge themselves, and you don't let people decide what's relevant and what's not. If you were doing a story on her tenure at the State Department, I mean, how absurd would it be for her to be able to go through her documents and emails and say, well, Gretchen, I'll give you this, but not that. That's why we have Records Acts and the Code of Federal Regulation, and that's why the president said don't use personal email.
Right. So what about subpoena power? Will you do that?
We're going to use every legal recourse at our disposal to make sure that we have all the documents.
Morgan Wright is a cybersecurity analyst and the founder of SafeLife. Shannon Coffin counseled former Vice President Dick Cheney and is an expert on executive branch compliance with the Presidential Records Act. Gentlemen, great to have you both on the show today. All right.
Hi, Gretchen.
Shannon, let me start with you, because you have been on the inside. You are an expert at this. Who would Hillary Clinton have gone to authorize the fact that, number one, she could use only private email, not a government account, and number two, that she could set up the server at her private home?
That's my favorite question, Gretchen. Who said this was okay? Because if you review the Federal Records Act, you know that all records that reflect the business of the agency have to be preserved by the Secretary. And here's a case where the Secretary is most deliberately flouting that law.
But who would she go to? I mean, in the chain of command, would she go to the White House? She's the Secretary of State, so she's not going to go to anyone higher in the State Department, right? So who would she go to?
Well, you would think she would ask her lawyers. But I haven't heard anything from anyone in this administration that said our lawyers have said this is fine. And I have a hard time believing any lawyers would do so. It's not just the Federal Records Act, Gretchen. There's a criminal prohibition here that says that the custodian of any federal record can't conceal that record. And what is this but concealment of federal records?
All right, I want to get to Morgan now, because there are so many questions about whether or not this information was safe on this server and in these emails. Talk to me about hacking and about classified information that possibly could be now out somewhere else in the cyber world.
Yeah, hi, Gretchen. Good to see you again. The fact that Guccifer hacked the emails from Sidney Blumenthal that exposed this answers the question as whether or not the private email they were using was secure. It wasn't. The real question, too, is how did she access the emails? Was it through government computers, a government-supplied BlackBerry? If so, it goes down to the point is then somebody has to configure that to do it. but it is totally, you introduce problems of introducing malware. We know the Chinese are very expert at the phishing attacks, delivering an email where you click on it, it delivers a payload that allows you access inside the system.
Federal law makes it a crime punishable to up to 3 years in prison if someone has records and, quote, willfully and unlawfully conceals or destroys such records. Did she conceal those records for years when those 7 committees were demanding to see her personal correspondence, her professional correspondence? Moments before we came to air, I spoke to Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. So is she in trouble legally?
She's in a lot of trouble legally, and there's 2 sources of her trouble. One is if she retained on her personal email account using the Clinton server at her home or near her home in Chappaqua, New York, classified materials, classified documents. She arguably violated the same statute that General Petraeus has agreed that he will plead guilty to, which prohibits retaining classified information in a non-government, non-secured way. That's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. There's no grand jury. There's no trial jury. But the punishment is up to a year in jail and a $100,000 fine for each document.
Does it have to be a willful thing? She's going to say, I did it all my information was there. I didn't do that willfully. I wasn't willfully flouting the law.
Well, she doesn't have to willfully flout the law, but she has to willfully retain the document. If she received a classified document or discussion about classified information, for example, we're going after Osama bin Laden. We think he's in Abbottabad, and that comes from the president or from the Secretary of Defense, and that is in her computer in her home, rather than secured in a government computer. She has violated the same statute that General Petraeus is going to plead guilty to.
What are the odds that when she did all of her emailing on the private account, that in her entire tenure as Secretary of State, she never sent or received anything classified, which is what the State Department's claiming right now?
In my view, it would be inconceivable. I don't know how she could do her job because she had the highest security clearance there is. She had the same security clearance as the president, the Secretary of Defense, and the head of the CIA, so that she could openly and clearly deal with these national secrets. The other way that she's in trouble is a person who knowingly and willfully destroys or conceals government records. This is a felony punishable in jail by up to 3 years, and are you ready for this? Disqualification from holding public office under the United States of America in the future.
That is stunning.
Well,
what would they have to prove? That she knowingly did it and that she unlawfully did it?
Yes, and the it is concealing from the government documents that she knew or ought to have known belonged to the government.
Major.
There have been a lot of descriptions today of what Secretary Clinton may or may not have done. Violated the law, skirted the law, complied. Where do you come down?
I come down wherever the State Department attorney comes down.
As a cybersecurity guy, why would somebody want to have a server in their own home?
That is a policy question, not technology, and the real simple answer is because they want to prevent others from seeing their communication. There is no technology reason why you would do it because the State Department already puts security guidelines in place.
She's been turning over documents, but not all documents.
Correct, because instead of going to the government and saying, I want my personal documents, the government had to go to her and say, we want the governmental documents. So instead of the government giving her the personal ones, she decided what was personal and what was governmental.
And that's where we are today. That is the current status, that she has decided what we get and what we don't get.
That act of possessing and deciding is the act of concealment, which is made criminal by the statute.
Our Constitution is being shredded. We know about the secret wiretaps. We know about the secret military tribunals, the secret White House email accounts. It is a stunning record of secrecy and corruption, of cronyism run amok.